This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger.
A couple months back, I was supposed to feature this vehicle, different color, but that unfortunately was sent up to a different part of the province for journalists in that area, and I was stuck with the regular gas version. But we did something different. I wanted to push myself as an amateur filmmaker and do something I hadn't done before. But here we are now in the vehicle I had booked and to be able to feature it for you today. This is a 2021 Lincoln Aviator Grand Touring all-wheel drive. This is the plug-in hybrid version of the midsize three-row SUV from Lincoln. Now, when I featured this car a couple of years ago, the regular gas one, I said we were hoping to get into the electrified version, and here we finally are. And there are some key differences about it. If you want to know absolutely everything there is to know about the Lincoln Aviator, take a look at the video that we did on the 2020. The exterior color is the same, interior was different color, but the options and everything were all the same pretty much from the one that we did and this one. So if you want to know absolutely everything, take a look at that first, because today we're really just going to be talking about what makes the Grand Touring different and why you might want to consider the plug-in hybrid. Now, as I mentioned, there are a couple differences about this. Up front, the Lincoln badge, the star on the front, has blue inserts to distinguish it from the regular gas version, and also the Aviator badge along the sides where the fenders are, those are also blue as well. So it's kind of a cool look to it, subtle, and then also you have a charging port in the front fender as well, which you don't have on the regular one. Aside from that though, it'd be pretty hard to tell that these are different compared to a regular gas version. Under the hood though, things are different yet somewhat similar. This uses the 3-liter twin-turbo V6 engine from Lincoln, but it has a whole lot more power. 494 horsepower total, 630 pound-feet of torque. And that is pretty considerable for a mid-sized non-performance vehicle. It is a 75 kilowatt-hour electric motor, so it's not overly powerful, but when you combine it with the gas system, you do get a lot of power. Now, Ford also says that this is using a different 10-speed automatic transmission. It's been designed specifically for the hybrid system, giving you a slightly different experience than you would with the gas version. But for the most part, it's pretty seamless. You don't feel the transmission when you're in the gas mode. And one other thing to note that is sort of interesting when it comes to this vehicle is how it actually drives compared to other plug-in hybrids that we've tested. The electric system can drive all four wheels, and the gas system can drive all four wheels, much like the BMW X5 xDrive 45e that we featured back in the winter. That allowed you to use xDrive in full electric or full gas or a mix of the two. Same with this. So that's the future. That's where things are going. A vehicle that still does not do that is something like the Volvo XC90 that we featured that only drives the rear wheels. So this, you get full all-wheel drive all the time. And we'll talk about how the plug-in hybrid system works a little bit more on our road test, because there are some things that we found about it that I'm just not satisfied with. Now, if you didn't quite catch the MSRP for this vehicle, both the as tested and MSRP price here in Canada and the United States, we're looking at about $94,000 Canadian. If you think back to that BMW X5 that we had, base MSRP was actually less, about $1,000 less than this, and the as tested price for that X5 was just a little bit more. There were a lot of options on it, but you got more electric range out of it. This Lincoln Aviator uses a 13.6 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. It's smaller than the one that we saw on the BMW X5, and you do get less range. When I have it fully charged, it tells me I can get about 30 kilometers without having to run out of electricity. But I do find that you use more electricity while it's driving. It regenerates more than I've seen in some other plug-in hybrids, because when I picked this vehicle up, I had absolutely no battery. It was at 0%. And in my 115 kilometer drive home, I somehow managed to do 25 kilometers fully electric. So if you add that to about 30 kilometers of electric range when it's fully charged, that's not bad overall. And if you're doing a lot of in-town stuff, it might be fine. But it is important to note, compared to the BMW X5, this does not have as much range, and it does end up costing more than the one that we drove. Now, there are a couple other differences about this specs-wise when it comes to a regular Lincoln Aviator. This has a 7mm shorter height than the regular gas version. There's also 39mm less front headroom, and I do feel that. I always find with Lincoln vehicles, I sit too high up. If I'm sitting straight, my head actually touches the headliner, so I do notice that there is less front headroom. And they also say that there's about 117 liters less interior passenger volume. Now the cargo space doesn't change that much. It's about 1 liter or so for second and third row, so you don't lose too much on cargo, but you do lose out a little bit on the front headroom. And essentially everything else is the same. When it comes to the fuel capacity, things like that, it's all pretty much the same. That doesn't change from the regular gas version, so you're not losing out on anything, you're just spending more to get the hybrid system. And the only 2 drive mode changes are the addition of the Pure EV mode and the Preserve EV mode. Pure EV, electric only, with the driver option to enable the engine. However, even though it hasn't been that cold this week, it's been about 10 degrees Celsius when I start the vehicle up. If I put it into Pure EV mode, it starts the engine right away. I guess the HVAC system, even though it's set to 21 degrees, needs the engine to warm up. So I've noticed that I just cannot get around town fully electric as much as I would in normal plug-in hybrids. The Preserve EV mode will help to charge the battery up to about 75%. So if you want to have it charged up for whatever you're doing before you get to your destination, you have that option. We'll talk about the rest of it as we go on our road test. I want to take it on the road and tell you why you might want to consider this. We'll do some performance testing, show you our fuel economy numbers, and everything else that you need to know if you're in the market for the 2021 Lincoln Aviator Grand Touring.
Let's start off with a quick performance test. Oh yeah. Oh buddy. And 100. Now this is not the quickest thing out there, but 0 to 100, that wasn't too bad overall. Performance on this is pretty decent. I personally just wish that they didn't have fake exhaust ports on the back, this quad exhaust, and instead of them coming out where they should, where it looks like they would come out, Lincoln's decided to stick them out underneath the vehicle. So I would have fixed the fake exhaust pipes, make them actually functional. But aside from that though, performance on this is pretty good. If you're for some reason buying this one because you want to have more performance, then you've definitely got it. But obviously the idea of this is to have something that is a little bit more fuel efficient. All right, so let's talk about the fuel economy numbers. That's important. This is a plug-in hybrid. That's probably the whole reason why you're buying it. If we think back to the Lincoln Aviator that we drove, the non-hybrid, that completed our 100-kilometer test loop in 9.8 liters per 100 kilometers. Pretty average for a mid-size luxury SUV. Now, this is a plug-in, so we have to compare it to the BMW X5. That vehicle pretty much beat our records for any plug-in hybrid in the sort of mid-range range department. That completed it in 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers and drove 42.7 kilometers fully electric before switching over to gas. Now, how does this do? It does not stay in full electric mode. Even if it's warm out like it is now, no matter what I do, when I put it into pure EV mode for a few minutes, it will run the gas. So I do not have a number for how continuously you can drive electric because it just does not do it. But we completed our 100-kilometer test loop in 6.1 liters per 100 kilometers, and we drove about 43.4 kilometers total in electric mode. So it's not continuous, it switches on and off in between. So you do get a decent amount of electric mode out of it, but as you can see, fuel economy numbers just not as good as they were with the BMW X5. So that vehicle makes more sense. If you're buying it as a strictly plug-in hybrid vehicle, you want to have the most electric range, I would suggest going for that. This works well as a hybrid that just happens to have a battery pack that you can charge it up and get a little bit more range out of it. So I find that it works well for that type of needs. And honestly, I mean, I enjoy the rest of the car. We've liked the Lincoln Aviator up until now. It's just, you know, as a plug-in, it's expensive. It doesn't have as much range. But as I mentioned outside, you do have full electric all-wheel drive with this, like the BMW X5, and that is the future when it comes to this segment. You know, BMW does it, Volvo does not, so they need to get together and get going on that. But yeah, I do like it overall. The ride is good, it's comfortable. We have the same suspension on here that you get on the regular Aviator. Space is good as well. Even with the slightly smaller interior dimensions for the front headroom, I still find it's perfect. But again, as an electric, it just misses some of the marks. I have set this up to use the scheduling so that it would get warm and cold depending on the temperature that I set, and the time just did not do it. I had it plugged into our level 2 charger at home, our EV Duty smart home charger, and it just did not do anything. I'd come into the cabin after, you know, a couple minutes past the time that I set it to be ready to go, nothing. The interior, the only thing was the heated seats were on. The HVAC systems were not on at all, so that kind of a miss there. And then in terms of the charging port, every time I go to use it, it's always unlocked. It doesn't seem to lock itself. So if you're out somewhere, if security is kind of an issue for you, that might be something there as well. So I've noted that when we're looking from those perspectives as a plug-in hybrid, it misses the mark in some departments. So I'm hopeful that Lincoln will do more. I hope that they take this technology and the technology they've developed with the Ford Mustang Mach-E and the technology that's in the Ford F-150 Power Boost and continue to develop it, because their tech is there. It's just, it needs a little bit more refinement. The car itself is great. It's just marrying it with that hybrid technology to make the experience that much better, because you're buying this because you want something that is going to save you money on fuel, and this does do the trick. It just doesn't do it as well as the rest of the vehicles that we've driven.